Hello everybody and welcome back to the Tiny Fibre Studio podcast. My name's Bex and this channel is all about knitting and spinning and all of the good things. And a lot about me having to throw mice for my cats because they have me very well trained. You may remember that last time I spoke to you, I was going through my purchases from Yarnporium and the various things that I had bought before and after Yarnporium as well. And I have started one of those projects, actually two of those projects now, which is Mon Mane. I wasn't actually planning on having Dexter on my lap at this point, so let me, yeah. He's so sweet. So this is Mon Mane. Yes. Do you like it, Dexter? Do you like it? Good. This is now the fourth time that I have knitted it. When I say that I've knitted it 4 times, that does not mean that I have 3 completed Mon Mane sweaters in my drawer. I just mean that I have started and frogged this 3 times and I'm now on my 4th attempt. It's currently still wet. I don't want to sort of hold it up for too long because I don't want it all stretching out. But I will talk you through all 4 different incarnations of this sweater. The first time I got down to the bottom of the raglan increases and I'd been to knitting group, but you know, I thought it's pretty straightforward. All I've got to do is just an increase on either side of a marker every other round. That's straightforward. My brain can keep track of that. Nope, it really can't. I got home, I started going onto the body and I thought let me just double check the number of stitches between all the markers. Way off, way off. Somewhere along the line I had ended up with not only the wrong amount of stitches but different numbers of stitches between each set of markers, like sleeves completely different from each other, back and front completely different from each other. And the weird thing was, when I was looking down the stitches, I couldn't see where I'd gone wrong. I couldn't see where I'd missed an increase or added an extra increase. It was really weird. So I started again. The second time I got all the way down to the end of the body and then decided that I should block it because it's superwash. I needed to block it to see how much it was going to stretch because although I'd done a swatches, particularly in superwash yarns, very often don't tell the full story, especially when it's a garment, because superwash stretches, part of the superwashing process is kind of getting rid of the scales that give the grip on regular wool. And because those scales aren't there, all the fibres kind of slide past each other that much more easily. So superwash does tend to stretch, and I knew that that was going to happen. When I blocked it the first time, the gauge was just horrific. The gauge was not what I wanted at all. And I looked at it for a while and I was like, maybe I could get to like it. No. It's too loose, it was too loose, so I frogged it and started again. So I'd knit that original one on 5mm needles, which was what I'd swatched on and it had looked okay in the swatch, but the extra weight of the rest of the body just, yeah, it was not a nice gauge. On the third attempt, I also got down to the bottom of the body. This time though, the problem was that I could see where I'd done the helical knitting. So if you're not familiar with helical knitting, it's a technique that is recommended particularly when you want to do either jogless joins or when you're alternating skeins. I am alternating skeins in this one because it is a hand-dyed yarn. The yarn, which is very, very beautiful. I do love all the little pops of colour, very, very nice. The yarn is Stranded Dyeworks, so Amy from the Stranded podcast. It's her merino Aran base and it's in the flower crown colourway. Because it's hand dyed, and particularly because it's hand dyed and it's speckled and there are sort of different pops of colour in each of the skeins, like each skein has a slightly more prominent colour than the others, I had to alternate these skeins. If I hadn't done, I would have got, you know, part way down and you would have been able to see a really distinct line where I switched from one colour to another. There are different ways of changing or alternating skeins. One is that you can just drop one and then pick up the other one as you go on to the next row. And that's fine, but it leaves a line which normally would be hidden because it would be on the purl side of the work. The problem with this is that you knit it on the knit side, but you're actually going to be wearing it on the purl side. And so any of your ends, any of your kind of your workings, as it were, need to be on the knit side. And I think Amy had tried doing that, but she was getting a real distinct line up the side where she was changing from one skein to another. So I used the Helical Knitting method, which if you haven't already seen it, Grace from Babel's Travelling Yarns has a very nice little tutorial on there. I think what was happening on that third attempt was I was pulling the stitch a little bit too tight when I picked the yarn, the previous yarn back up again. So you could see really quite a distinct diagonal line of tight stitches where I'd switch yarns in the Helical Knitting. The other thing was that both of the first two skeins of yarn ran out very, very close to each other. And so I had to switch almost both skeins at the same time over to the new skeins. And it just wasn't as gradual a transition as I would have liked. So that was attempt number 3. By this point, I was just thinking, I'm just really feeling like throwing the towel in and just moving on to something else. But I was determined. I went, no, you're just going to have to continue with this. You're going to have to just bite the bullet and do it because you need to get this done. You know, you bought this yarn specifically for this project. Just get it done. So attempt number 4, I am doing on 4.5mm needles, which was what I did with attempt number 3, and the gauge was nice on there. What I actually did was the back of the neck and the top of the shoulders, you do flat before you join in the round. So what I did was I didn't bother alternating skeins at that point. I just started alternating when I actually joined it in the round, which actually killed 2 birds with 1 stone because I then made sure that one skein of yarn would last a lot longer on the body, and so I wouldn't have that experience of trying to switch both yarns at the same time to the second lots of skeins. So I think we're finally getting somewhere. Like I say, at the moment it looks like it's a little bit large, but actually when I put it on, it looks actually really good. I'm really happy with it. I did notice that there are a couple of areas where my tension was a little bit off. I'm trying to find them now. Maybe it's not on that side. And I don't actually know whether that is because, no, it's on the front, there it is. There's a little area here where my row tension's just slightly off, but that's something that I can manually manipulate stitches around if I need to. It may also be to do with where there's a join or something. So yeah, anyway. So yeah, I feel like I'm finally getting somewhere with this. This is still damp because I'm still in the process of blocking it. I'm going to stick the dehumidifier on for a day or so and try and just get the last of the damp out of this, and then I can continue working on it. But let me show you how I've been managing my yarn for this one. Recently, at least in part because of some of the experiments that I've been doing for 51 Yarns, I've started to get really interested in the sort of minutiae of twist in yarn. And there's a really interesting thing that happens when you pull up from either a centre pull ball or from the outside of a ball, compared to just pulling directly off the side of the ball. Let me demonstrate with some toilet roll. So if you imagine that, you know, this is your ball of yarn, this is, you know, you've got it wrapped around a central point. If you pull off the top, then it all twists. So you're adding twist. If, however, you were to pull it off directly from the side, then it all stays with the same amount of twist. In this case, none. So I've been really kind of fascinated by this, and I've been experimenting. I've been kind of playing around with some different options. I've been trying to read as much as I can about this this phenomenon. And so for Mon Manet, I decided that I would try to keep the twist as it was originally intended. So what I did was I used my ball winder to just wind my cake of yarn exactly as I usually would. Dexter, what are you doing? And then I just, if you imagine this is on the ball winder, I just flipped the bobbin upside down and stuck the shaft through the middle of it as I was pulling the cake off the ball winder. And obviously I'm only using one end of the bobbin. This end is free. And I was then putting this onto my Akerworks Lazy Capes so that I could have both skeins of yarn working at the same time, and I could just alternate between the two of them. Like so. And that works brilliantly when I'm at home. However, it's not quite so great if I'm going on a train journey, or if I want to knit at work or in a cafe or something like that, where there might be kind of limited table space. So it worked really, really well, but just not necessarily the most portable option. Although, you know, I did knit on the train with it. I knitted in a cafe, I knitted at work, but it did mean that it took up a little bit of extra space in my bag. And also, you know, I didn't really like the idea of the wood of the lazy cake getting damaged. So I used this for quite a few weeks actually, and really enjoyed using it for my knitting. And then just before Christmas, Akerworks got in touch with me and completely out of the blue said, we'd like to send you some of our more recent products for you to test and review. Is that something that you do? If so, where can we send it? And I said I would absolutely love to try out some of the new products. Just be aware that any reviews that I do will be honest reviews. I have no desire to mislead anybody or, you know, be biased in any way. But you guys know that I already own quite a lot of Akerworks products. They're a company that I like to support because I think there's a lot of innovation that comes out of that company, and innovation ultimately is what drives everything forward. And that's a thing that I think is really important and to be cherished in this community. There was one thing that I specifically mentioned I was interested in trying out, and that was the butterfly Kate, which is this. So they very, very, very kindly sent me this one. I think this is maple. It's definitely not, this is the cherry one. So this is one of the lighter woods. And I have been using this for all of Mon Manet and also for the other project that I will show you later. And it's really, really nice. First of all, I love the action. Let me show you how this works. So first thing you do is just pull on the wings, if you will. There is then a little stopper here, which you pull out. You flip this forward, and then it has two positions that this can slot into. One that is a little bit more slanted, which would be very, very useful if you were putting this behind you to ply, particularly if it's on the floor or something like that. It's going to give you a good angle to ply from. Or you can have an angle that is a little bit more upright, like that. There's also a couple of other nice little features. You've got a little magnetic stitch marker holder on here, which at first I kind of thought I won't use that. And then there was an evening where I was trapped on the sofa by the cats and I had to remove stitch markers. And I thought, oh, that's fine. I can just keep them safe by just kind of throwing them somewhere in the direction of the magnet. And they stuck on there until I was cat free and ready to liberate my stitch markers and put them away. And it also has some little grooves for holding patterns. I would say that that's probably something that I won't use because I don't tend to work from paper patterns. I work from digital patterns on my tablet or on my phone. So that's probably not something that I would use, but it's useful for it to be there if you are somebody who does knit from paper patterns. It also has some nice grippy feet on the bottom as well, so that when it's sitting on your table and you're knitting from it, or even on the sofa, quite often mine ends up on the sofa while I'm knitting, it doesn't move anywhere as you're pulling from your yarn. When you're ready to fold it up again, you just take the stopper, pull that up, push the shaft down, put the stopper back into its little slot, and then you can fold the legs up. I should mention that there are other similar products available. In particular, Hanson Crafts has one. The only thing for me with the Hanson Crafts one is that there's no way to change the tilt. So it's a straight, like a 90-degree angle. So there's no way to change that. And certainly for me, I really like the flexibility of having those two positions in the Akerworks butterfly cape. I will do a full, properly edited short review of this at some stage because I want to give people the option to just see that review if they want to, but it's been really useful. I've loved using it so far and I'm sure I will continue to do so. So that is Mon Manet and the whole alternating skeins thing. So I guess next up is gonna be swatches, because while I was waiting for my, I don't know, second, third, fourth attempt to block of Mon Manet, I started swatching for some of my other sweater projects. So this one is the swatch that I did for my Skoga Fuel. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, please let me know how to pronounce it, because I did try and look up any information about that, but I couldn't find any. This is knit in Blackie Yarn's Tour, which is my friend Katie's sort of baby, as it were. And I did 2 different needle sizes on this one. When I do my swatches, I always use the Isolde trick of just putting yarn overs for each full needle size and then purl stitches for each 1/4 millimetre. So in this case, I've got 4 yarn overs and then 2 purl stitches. So I know that that is 4.5 millimetre. So I did 4.5 millimetre and I did 5 millimetre. I definitely liked the 4.5 millimetre fabric better. And it also came pretty much almost exactly to gauge. So that was really good, really good. When I do my swatches, I also keep a note of the gauge both before and after washing, which can come in really handy if you don't have time to block something, but you want to know how long that piece of fabric is going to end up being. If you are able to refer back to the swatches, you might at least get some vague idea of how it's going to turn out. For example, I knew that it lost about half a stitch per 4 inches after blocking, and I also knew that it grew by 1 row after blocking. Obviously, again, the weight of the garment is going to make a difference there, but at least you have some idea, right? That was the tall swatch for Skoga Fuel, and I have also swatched for Wool and Honey. This is Blackie Yarn's Tamar, which I've used before and I love. And this is in the camel colourway. This is actually slightly different in colour to the previous lot of camel that I've used. The dye lots can be really quite significantly different, so I would not rely on just buying another dye lot if you've already got some in the other colour. I feel like the previous version of camel was much greener. But Tamar is one of those yarns that changes colour depending on the light in really quite a significant way. So in this lighting, it's looking very gold. I'm just going to put it up here because I love this. It's so lovely. This is going to be for the Wool and Honey sweater by Andrea Mowry, and it's fab. I love it. This particular swatch was done on 3.5mm needles. It's really nice. It's really nice fabric. I think I'm quite happy with it. I haven't actually measured the gauge yet after blocking. I have the notes from before blocking, but I need to measure it after blocking. And each of these swatches, I have been using something else that Akerworks sent to me, which was the swatch gauge tool, which is actually really useful. I feel like when you're talking about gauge swatches, you go, well, you know, you just get a ruler and just count the number of stitches. Somehow though, I always find it really difficult to follow a row or a column of stitches. Don't know why, you know, my eyes work perfectly well, it shouldn't be that difficult, but for whatever reason, I do sometimes find it a little bit challenging to do so. So the gauge swatch tool is kind of frosted plastic, and when you lay it over your swatch, you're able to kind of line it up on a specific row of stitches or a specific column of stitches. And I've been finding that it genuinely does make it easier for me personally to count my row and stitch gauge. It also has markings in there for both inches and centimetres, and it has these nice little grippy kind of claws that really settle into the fabric when you have it on a flat surface, and it kind of stops it from moving around, which is sometimes another problem that I come across with either rulers or tape measures, that I sometimes find that it's kind of sliding around and I have to recount a few times. So yeah, that's also been very useful. This is actually part of the knitter's toolkit that they sent me. Again, I will do a full short review on these so that you can just find this information if you want it. So I had swatched with tulle while I was waiting for the third attempt of Mon Manet to dry from blocking. While I was waiting for my fourth attempt of Mon Manet to block so that I could judge the body length, I started actually knitting Skoga Fuel. This in theory should be quite a quick knit. It's designed actually for the same yarn as my Strocker, and Strocker I think took me about a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. It was very quick. So hopefully this will be the same, fingers crossed. So I've done an entire sleeve. This is still wet, it's in the process of blocking at the moment. So I wanted to just check that it was going to block in the way that I thought it would, which was to slightly lengthen and also to kind of narrow the sleeve as well. And it has done that. I've compared it to Strocker when Strocker's flat, and it's fine. It's a pretty similar width. And if you can see that, it's actually a pretty similar width to the Strocker sleeve. Originally, when I was knitting this sleeve, I was thinking this is really, really quite wide and it's going to look kind of ridiculous. And do I have to go down to the next size? But I think I'm okay. So I'm going to knit the other sleeve, block that as well, and just make sure that they're coming out the length and width that I want. And then I will start on the body. So that is Blackie Yarn's Tor in the Rundlestone colourway. And I also have Sheep's Tor and Leiden are the other two colours that are going to go with it. And I'm hoping to be able to wear this to Edinburgh Yarn Festival. And I will just be very glad to have other sweaters in my, my wardrobe that are not Strocker, because I wear Strocker a lot, and as much as I love it, I feel like everybody just sees this all the time. I also actually need to repair my my putia, because that has a little fray on the cuff. I don't quite know how. I don't think the cat's got to it, but it needs repairing, and I should really do that this week. So yeah, that is all of my knitting progress. Spinning progress wise, I haven't really done very much. I've done a couple of samples for 51 yarns. I know I always say this, but there will be some more 51 yarns videos this week. Katie from the Green Bean podcast came over and we did the teaching someone to spin episode, which I might have to put into two parts, because we did the initial learning to spin and then we also did a little bit of just experimenting with different types of spindles and andying plying bracelets and goodness knows what else. So I might separate that into two, but if you watch Katie's podcast, which you should, it's kind of hilarious because you will see a different side of Katie. So I will be doing some more 51 yarns videos, and I will show you some of the things that I've been spinning in that rather than in this episode. However, let me show them to you briefly now. First one, this was for the semi-woolen category. This is from a Felt Studio UK bat that I bought at Wonderwool probably about 7 or 8 years ago now. It was the first textured bat that I ever bought, and actually it's probably the only textured bat that I haven't spun. It was done for the semi-woolen episode, and the reason I chose it was pretty much because I was running out the door to my spinning group and going, oh, I need to spin something for semi-woolen, what have I got? And this was pretty much the only thing that I had in a bat that wasn't part of a larger project. So I grabbed this, and it's rather fabulous. It is full of all sorts of different ingredients. There's merino in there, there's BFL, there's camel, there's mohair, there's all sorts of stuff, yeah. So that was a lot of fun to spin, and I continued spinning that to the other bobbin at Liscard Guild a couple of days ago. So that is all finished now, I just need to ply it. So I need to get on with that. I've been debating what to do with it. There's a part of me that kind of feels like it needs to be woven rather than knitted, which could be interesting because my weaving loom has not seen the light of day for about 3 years. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see whether that ends up being woven. I think it's got too much twist in it to just be able to weave it as a single. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I'll try plying it and see what I think. I might end up knitting it. Who knows? Don't know. But that's one of the projects that I've been working on spinning wise. There are some other 51 yarns ones as well, but this is another thing that I've been working on, and this is for both the S-ply Z-twist and the Z-ply S-twist weeks. When I saw those two topics, I thought, well, that seems like it requires a little bit of an experiment, and so I have spun 2 lots of yarn as similarly as possible, but with different twist directions. And I have also knitted a couple of swatches. And I feel like I can tell a difference between these two, but I need to really sit and examine what that difference is. Looking at them now, I definitely feel like the plies have separated a little bit more in this one. I don't know. I need to sit and fully appreciate why these are different. They need blocking first as well. But that was really interesting as a little experiment. And as I say, I've been kind of obsessing over this whole adding twist, removing twist, not removing twist, etc. thing. So that's what I've been producing recently in the way of spinning. My apologies that this is probably getting to be rather a long episode by this point, but I feel like I've got a lot of catching up to do because I've actually been doing the stuff for a change. There is one other thing that I wanted to show you, which is a little preview of John Arbon Xmas sock. When Grace and I met up with some others to go and tour around the John Arbon mill, we were aware at that point that Xmas sock was coming, and I had been looking on the website and they had this combination of the beautiful vibrant green that I have here with a sort of teal colour, and I was just obsessing over those two colours together because they're amazing. And when Sonia said, oh, you know, here, have a sample, I had to go for this colour. I think Grace went for the sort of maroony burgundy one, which was really, really nice as well. Xmas sock is a combination of 60% Exmoor Blueface, 20% Corriedale, 10% Zwartbles and 10% nylon, and it is a superwash. As you can see, the colours are beautiful and vibrant and fabulous. And all of the names are kind of weird Devon phrases, which I kind of love as well. Odmadod is actually this one, Odmadod. And Dimity is the other one that I really like as a combination for this, which is the tealy colour. And you've got things like Mizzle. Mizzle, if you've not come across that, is a cross between mist and drizzle. So it's the kind of very, very fine rain where you just get completely soaked, even though it doesn't really feel like it's raining that hard. We were talking about this at Knitting Group, and I think the one bit of feedback is that I would probably like to see more neutrals. I feel like there are sort of 3 neutrals, but one of them is quite a dark sort of ocean blue. And I think this could be really, really popular for colour work. So it would be good to have some more neutral contrasts. So I will do a swatch and tell you what I think of it and do a proper review, and Dexter, I'm sure, will tell you what he thinks of it. What do you think? What does it smell of? So I'll do a proper swatch, I'll tell you what I think of it in a future episode, but just as a little heads up, I wanted to kind of put this out there because it launches on the 24th of January and I don't know whether I'll get a podcast episode out by that time. Hopefully sometime around then I will do a little review of my sample. So that's really exciting, and obviously John Arbon is a local manufacturer to where I am. They're on the north coast of Devon, so quite a bit further up than I am. But it was lovely to go to the mill and meet everybody. I've obviously met them before at shows and stuff, but you know, to actually get the mill tour and everything was lovely. If you didn't catch that, it is my one Vlogmas episode, which is a tour of the John Arbon mill. At the moment, the video that's up there is just little snippets of each of the machines. I do have the full video to edit and upload at some point. So I think that's everything that I want to show you in terms of things that I've actually been working on. However, there are a couple of other things. The first is Mars from the Hey Brownberry podcast. If you don't already watch her, you totally should. She's awesome and lovely and calm and just has a beautiful personality. She was talking about her word of 2019, which is ritual. And I thought this was a really interesting word to choose because there are so many things that you can make a ritual. And one of the things that she mentioned that she's going to do is to take time before she knits to moisturize her hands, give them a little massage, look after them, because you know they're things that do a lot for us, and I think sometimes they can kind of get neglected. I thought this was a brilliant idea. She had a little solid moisturiser that came in a kind of cardboard, almost like a Lipsolve container. And I can't find anybody in the UK who does those. So if you are somebody who makes handmade cosmetics and creams and lotions and potions, maybe have a look into that, because I would definitely be interested in having one in each of my knitting bags. However, for the moment, I have a lot of hand cream and moisturiser and stuff that I need to use up. It was actually one of the things that I identified when I was doing the KonMari method before I moved house. I kept coming across hand cream and moisturiser, and I went, I don't really think I use hand cream and moisturiser, so why the heck do I have so many of them? So I've actually ordered some screw top tins with sort of anti-leak seals from Amazon. I'm going to transfer some of the stuff that I have to use up into those smaller tins, because no matter how many different bags I try and put moisturiser in, somehow it's never there when I want it. So I'm going to transfer things into those and hopefully use that up. So that was a great little idea from Mars of the Hey Brownberry podcast. So there you go. I'm going to finish this before it just gets ridiculously long. Thank you so much for joining me. As I mentioned, I will hopefully have some more 51 Yarns episodes up in the next few days. I am planning to spend my days filming and my evenings editing. So when I've actually got some daylight, I can get some filming done and I'll do some editing in the evening. So yeah, I hope you can join me for those. Please feel free to get in touch in between now and the next episode. You can find me on Instagram as Tiny Fibre Studio, and on Ravelry I'm Ibex. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you again very soon.